In this video we're going to be designing and 3D printing a low centre of gravity battery tray for this Trx-4 Defender. I'm also going to put a link to this in the video description to where you can download the actual files and print this yourself, or if you have a friend with a 3D printer, or you could send the files to a 3D printing company and have one in your own Trx-4. As you're probably aware, the Trx-4 Defender has a very high centre of gravity, so anything we can do to lower that, even if it's just a little bit, is going to be an improvement over the stock setup. So as you can see underneath, there is a little bit of space between the sort of top links for the axle, so we can drop the battery down at least another sort of 20 mil or so. I'll start by just taking some quick measurements, and then I think I'll have to remove the battery tray and then measure some more. Obviously we're going to be putting the battery down between the two chassis frames, so all of this brace area here is going to have to be removed because the end of the battery is going to be living down in that space with the new battery tray installed. So I think what I'll do is I'll take it apart more than I would normally, so that means I'll take off the rear shock tower, the rear bumper, so I can slide everything out and it gives me the most space to work with. This is actually quite tricky to use a camera and the other Docker at the same time. So as you can see, taking everything apart like that gives me loads of space underneath there, so I can sort of make the maximum use of the available space for the new battery position. I'm just going to pull this old tray out now as well. So like I said, that rear brace is going to have to come out as well. We will design and 3D print our own one to replace that, because obviously we want the stiffness still at the back end by the shock tower. But where that current one sits is where the sort of battery will want to be, so yeah, that's going to have to go. So with those 6 screws out, I can now remove the rear shock tower, and if I take the bumper off, I'll be able to slide that rear brace out as well. Probably one of my favourite purchases for the Trx-4 is those skid plates. The link for those is in the description, but they're made of stainless steel so they don't rust. And here's that rear brace. So I'm going to take the whole measurements from this so I can design a new one. And so with everything out of the way, we can see the sort of space that we've got to work with really nicely now. I'm going to try and bring that battery tray as low as possible without it actually affecting the sort of articulation on the rear axle. So I think now I'll go and open up the CAD program and we'll go from there. So after an hour or so of messing around in Fusion 360, this is what I've come up with. Now I did have a look at some other people's designs, and I noticed that most of them are all sort of square, like they're 90-degree angles. That is good for 3D printing, but it means the battery tray is going to be dropped down quite far. So you can see the design I've got here, the top piece is actually sloped. So if I rotate this, you can see when it's sat flat in the car, the battery's actually going to be raised up at the rear end. And what that means is it obviously gives us that extra bit of clearance, so we won't lose any articulation. When that axle comes up, it's not going to hit the bottom of the battery or the bottom of the battery tray like I think it would with some other people. So I think this gives mine a bit of an advantage. That's the rear brace. That was a really simple part to draw. I've done the holes at 2.5mm for M3 screws, so they should tap just fine with the existing screws. Shouldn't have a problem there. And if we have a look, this is what it looks like, the two pieces put together. That's kind of how it will look inside the truck, just so you can sort of visualize it. But I think for now we'll send the parts to the printer and we'll try and fit them to the truck. Alright, so that's finished printing now. Here's the finished part. That's obviously support material under the rear end there. This is what it looks like once we've removed the support material. So these are the two parts. This is one I test fitted earlier. And this is the part that we've just printed with my GaminGit name on there, of course. You will also need a Velcro strap as well to fix the battery in. There'll be a link in the description where you can get a bunch of these off Banggood. I happen to have this one laying around from that car there. If you're interested in 3D printing, here's a speaker, 3D printed Bluetooth speaker that I designed and 3D printed. I've got a video up on that on my channel, so I'll leave a link in the top right hand corner of the screen now. Right, let's get this new part fitted in. I'm just going to slide it in through the rear chassis rails at the back there. Makes it so much easier having everything else out of the way for this. Just check the clearance around the servos looks good. Just check those two holes line up. There's no reason why they shouldn't. Well, measuring must be working good today because those two holes line up real nice as well. So I'll get screws put in for those. The screws are obviously a little bit tight going in the first time because we're having to cut new threads into that plastic. But they're screwing in just fine and they're going tight, which is the main thing. Well guys, I'm really impressed with how that's fitted in there. That looks perfect, to be honest. And normally with stuff like this you have to print a couple of times because you didn't get it quite right the first time. But that looks to be sitting exactly where we wanted it. So I'll go ahead and slide in the rear brace now. Just make sure the holes line up for that. I have actually test fitted this piece first, so the screw should go in there just fine. And we can fit the rear shock tower back in its position as well. Alright, we'll put the rear bumper back in. Not forgetting the rear skid plate as well. That bit just screws through the into the bumper mount through the chassis, just on the end there. Finally, we just need to put the top screws in the shocks, left and right. And the CB radio aerial is getting in the way of my impactor, so I'll have to use a hand tool to tighten that anyway. I actually do use the hand tool to tighten all the screws after. Don't go full tight with the impactor because you'll damage threads. And there it is, all finished. So you can see the tray is quite a lot lower than the stock one. It's at least, what, an inch down below. Just tidy that out of the way so you can see what's going on. So you've got the two original fixing screws there. We haven't had to cut or drill any new holes, or, you know, if we wanted to take this off and put the stock one back on, we could. You can see it's sort of where the other one would have been. I use quite big batteries as well, so we'll have a look at how it fits with the big boy battery in there. Well, it's certainly a nice snug fit, which is what I was going for. Strap the battery in. That's a little bit too long, that, but I'll probably cut that down. That strap. Nice. Fits in there nice. You can see the battery is sitting much lower than the stock position, so the only thing is the weight's now more to the rear. That I don't know if that'll be an issue or not, but it's certainly much more into the sort of centre now in between the two chassis, so definitely going to reduce the centre of gravity somewhat, which can only be advantageous. Just check the axle flex again there, so if I lift up one of the wheels, sort of mimic articulation, you can see it's not touching at all. There is about 3 or 4 mil in there, so we could even go a little bit lower if we wanted, but I think, you know, for the effort involved, I'm quite happy with that. There's no way that's going to touch under full articulation, so that's a success in my books. So I won't show any footage of it actually out on the trails. I'm not going to do any tests like, you know, side hilling tests or anything like that. If you want to see that sort of stuff, you'll have to subscribe and watch out for my next video when we actually take it out on the trails, and we'll focus more on side hilling and stuff so we can see just how it performs, if any differently at all, to the last time. Thanks for watching.